Hey, what's up? I'm Todd, and if you didn't know this, I have been a professional dating coach for almost 20 years, and I get asked all the time, what is the best city in the entire world for meeting women? So I'm going to answer that question for you. However, I want to give you a couple caveats. Number one, I can only answer cities that I've been to and cities that I've probably been to more than a couple times. So there probably are a lot of amazing obscure cities that I've never been to and I can't answer that. So please don't flame me in the comments and tell me your city's the best when it's, someplace I haven't been. Coming in at number 5, we have potentially a controversial choice because a lot of people would put it at number 1 and a lot of people would put it as absolutely awful. And that city is Las Vegas, Nevada. In my opinion, best nightlife city in the entire world. You can go out any night of the week in Las Vegas and have an amazing night out. I mean, there's an entire economy designed around that fact. So for going out, meeting girls in night game, if you're willing to go to clubs and willing to deal with the nonsense that comes with that, then Vegas is absolutely amazing for you. Also, even during the day, Vegas literally has a party reputation. So literally the slogan for Vegas is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They're telling you right in the advertising, this is the place girls go to hook up. What are the downsides of Vegas for meeting girls? My personal experience with Vegas, I have been there many, many times. I actually lived there consecutively for 2 years, and during that 2-year period, I was going out almost every single night. I can tell you, for the first 6 months, that was amazing. After that, it was maybe a little bit much going out that often. I would recommend if you live there, don't go out every single night of the week. But I do have extensive experience with Vegas and tons of successful hookups and successful dating in Vegas as the background for making this recommendation. However, let's talk about what's not so good about Vegas. Vegas is very much a tourist and transient city. If you go out to the amazing nightlife in Vegas, many of the girls you're going to meet there are tourists, which is a good thing or a bad thing, depending. As far as hooking up and having a lot of one-night stands and having some crazy parties and crazy experiences, it's absolutely amazing. In terms of actually dating, though, it can be a problem. Because if you're meeting and sleeping with girls and then they fly out of town the next day, well, it's hard to have a relationship that way. Also, oftentimes, even when girls do hook up with guys in Vegas, they consider it their vacation experience and not a serious dating opportunity. It's an amazing city for meeting girls and hooking up. It's not necessarily the absolute best for dating and relationships. And yes, Vegas is a real city and does have a local population. However, the local population is still very focused around the industry of Vegas, which is a lot of entertainment and nightlife. So if the girls you want to date are in that industry, then that can be fine for you. There's a lot more of that type of girl as far as the attractive female population of Vegas than you will find doctors, lawyers, accountants, girls with sort of normal jobs, that kind of stuff. So it really depends what you're looking for, and it depends what sort of vibe you fit in with more in terms of dating. For me personally, that wasn't the type of girl I liked the most for dating, although I did date some and hooked up with a lot while I was there. I tend to prefer girls with more normal jobs if I'm looking for long-term dating. So that may have biased me towards putting Vegas a little bit lower than some other guys may place it. Another thing about Vegas, it's not for absolute beginners. It is a nightlife environment, and it is a fairly high-end, fairly hit you in the face, go, go, go night game environment. So guys that are shy of that environment and guys who are not really good at problem solving, dealing with logistics, dealing with friend groups, and dealing with chaos do tend to struggle there. A lot of guys go there because it's the party city and they think they're going to sleep with a ton of girls. And it just doesn't happen for them because the chaos is overwhelming or because there are, a lot of options and a lot of competition. So Vegas is a good hookup city if you are fairly good with girls. If you're not so good with girls, it can actually be a little bit tough. One other thing I forgot to mention at the start with the positives of Vegas, logistics are a very good thing. All right. One of the things that makes Vegas easy is, at least for tourists, all the tourists are staying in one very centralized location. So if you meet a girl, getting from where you met her to your place or to her place is usually very, very easy. Contrast that to other cities that are more spread out. It can be actually hard if you meet a girl to actually get to a place where you can be intimate. So in conclusion, Vegas is amazing for partying, amazing for being able to approach a lot of girls and meet a lot of girls, and it's great for hooking up if your skill in game is intermediate or higher level. However, it can be very tough if you're a beginner, and it can be very difficult for long-term dating. So those are the pros and cons of Vegas. Coming in at number 4, we have a city that's basically the opposite of Vegas, and that city is Chicago. This is an interesting city to put on the list and probably controversial to some people as well, but here's what I love about Chicago. Chicago is a big enough city and has enough going on in it that it does attract a lot of aspirational people and a lot of high-end individuals. However, it's small enough and sort of Midwestern attitude enough that you actually have access to the girls that are there without having to bend over backwards or make getting access your full-time job. So Chicago has a lot of going out that is sort of bar feel to it than a club feel to it. And again, the attitude, the Midwestern attitude, is a lot more friendly, we're nice, we talk to people, as opposed to a lot of the elitism you may see in some other big cities around the world. And so it really is a nice combination of being big enough and enough of a big deal city to have really hot girls there, but then you also have access to them. So for guys who are not crazy rich and guys who don't want to devote their entire life to getting access or don't want to be professional clubbers, you may very well find that you will do better in terms of meeting high quality women in Chicago than you will in other big cities or other small cities. So it's this nice kind of sweet spot between the two. Also, Chicago is good for most forms of game. You have good night game, you have good day game, you can walk up and meet girls throughout your day, and you also, it's big enough, you have very good online game. So it really hits all three genres, and that gives you a lot more abundance as well. Also, the vibe in Chicago is much more of a dating vibe than, for example, a city like Vegas, and also more of a dating vibe than some other cities that you might see even on this list, but especially off of this list. It has more of friendly, family, wholesome vibe a little bit than some other very, very big cities. Now, obviously, Chicago does have its downsides as a city that we won't even get into aside from dating, but it does have that Midwest attitude, which again is nice for more of a long-term dating feel. Another positive about Chicago is the logistics are pretty good. There is a centralized going out area and sort of a centralized downtown, and a lot of people do use public transit. People do use Ubers and taxis, and there is I think it's called the L, but they have a mass transit train system as well that is fairly widely used. And that does help a lot with logistics. So if you meet a girl and you drove your car and she drove her car separately, it is much harder to get to your place or her place than if you both took the train or the Uber or something along those lines. So those logistics are actually really pretty decent in Chicago. There are a lot of people that drive, especially more in the outskirts, but it is common enough not to be driving, and especially if you live downtown and can invite girls there, you will run into pretty good logistical situations. So what are the downsides of dating in Chicago? One of the absolute biggest ones, it's really, really cold in the winter, which means that people do not go out as much and it is kind of harder for dating. Now, that can be an upside if you do a lot of online dating potentially, but it still just is less pleasant for dating overall. So it is actually very, very cold. You know, I try not to get into factors outside of dating, but this is a factor that does actually affect dating. Beyond that, Chicago doesn't have a lot of overt, huge downsides, but a big problem is the lack of total upside as compared to some other cities. You see, there are a lot of very pretty girls, cute girls, girls that are fairly successful in Chicago, but the absolute, like the top models, the top business women, etc., tend to go to even bigger cities like your New Yorks, your LAs, your Londons, those kind of cities. So you won't find as many of what you consider the absolute tens, whether you mean that just on physical appearance or on total resume. So while Chicago is a city where it's much easier than most to date a very cute, very excellent girl, the absolute tip top girls aren't as readily available in Chicago as they might be in some of those other cities. There's a higher percentage of people in the Chicago area that grew up there, and they will have more sort of entrenched friend circles. When you meet a girl, for example, you meet a girl out at night or at a bar or a club, it's more likely she's very loyal to her friends and therefore less likely to go home with you than in some other cities where a greater percentage of the population moved there specifically for aspirational purposes and they don't have quite as entrenched a friend group. They're not going out with friends they've known for 10 years, they're going out with friends they've known for 10 weeks. So that is a difference for Chicago in terms of dating as well. So in conclusion, Chicago is really good for a lot of things and it is a wonderful city for dating, great place to meet cute, wonderful, normal girls. However, it is really damn cold, and also the tip top girls are not there quite as much as in some of the other bigger cities. City number 3 is one that me and my team debated heavily whether we should put on the list, because on the one hand, it is maybe the city with the absolute most beautiful girls that you will find anywhere, especially per capita. There is so much opportunity there, and it is a great party city. On the other hand, it does absolutely have its downsides, and that city is Miami. Now, Miami is similar to Vegas in a lot of ways in that it is a great nightlife city, lots of opportunity, lots of hot girls there, and it is known as a party city. It also attracts a lot of tourists. The girls in Miami in general are absolutely tip-top in terms of attractiveness. There's tons of modeling down there, tons of fashion. Also, it's just a warm weather vacation spot, so it is a quote-unquote hot girl vacation spot. So there are a lot of very hot girls in Miami. But it has more actual industry aside from nightlife and entertainment than Vegas does. And so in that sense, it's more of a real city. Also, the weather in Miami is amazing. It's a place that you can go all year round and have it be wonderful and beautiful. Even the summer. The summer's a little bit hot, but it's tolerable. The winter is absolutely beautiful down there. So it's a year-round city. Also, so far in Miami, we've talked a lot about night game, but there also is really good day game. There are lovely, wonderful outdoor malls full of beautiful women. There is the beach. There are lots of places to meet girls in your day-to-day life. And there also is a decent amount of opportunity for online dating in that city. Maybe not as good as some of the absolute biggest cities, but it's certainly an available option. So you do have all three methods of meeting girls available to you. So what are the downsides of Miami? Well, Miami is very good for a certain demographic of people and not as good for others. Because number one, while there are incredible high-end venues in Miami, they are just that. They are high-end, and it can be hard to access them unless you know someone or unless you're willing to pay a decent amount of money to get into them. While there may be some of the most beautiful girls on the planet there, they may be at a club you can't get to, or they may be at a table within the club you can't get to. So access is an issue in Miami. I would say for guys that can get access, Miami is absolutely incredible. For guys that have access issues, it can be a little bit problematic in that way. Also, when we talk about the amazing Miami nightlife, and it is amazing, there is one major drawback in my opinion, which is a lot of the clubs are very, very loud. So it is very hard to have a real conversation in them. Yes, there are other clubs and bars, but then you're now talking about not getting the absolute hottest girls anymore. So some of the benefits that I mentioned earlier are not available to you unless you go to an environment that's actually a little bit difficult. Miami can be tough. There's also a decent amount of competition in Miami, and there is an attitude in Miami that is very money-centric. So it's not uncommon to see a nightclub with a bunch of Lamborghinis and Ferraris lined up in front of it, and it's not uncommon to meet girls that are kind of into guys with money. So if that's not your scene, you may sometimes be annoyed by all of that. In general, Miami has a lot of beautiful women, a lot of fun parties, but it is a more superficial city than most. If you're not into that, that's going to be, annoying to you and problematic for you. If you are the guy that can play that superficial game, though, the opportunity is through the roof. One other downside of Miami, the language. I do personally speak Spanish, and I actually like that about Miami because I'm fluent, but if you don't speak Spanish well, you will run into some beautiful girls that just will have trouble speaking with you or will not be particularly willing to engage with you at the start if you don't speak Spanish. So you will run into that occasionally. There are plenty of girls that speak English. It's not a deal breaker, but it can be an annoyance. For city number 2 on the list, we're gonna take it international, and my pick for this city is Barcelona. Barcelona, Spain. So Barcelona is a wonderful mix of a tourist city that also, again, has a real city around it. So if you like to go meet tourists, you can absolutely do that. They are in abundance. At the same time, there are other parts of the city where you can go specifically to meet locals, and you will find locals throughout the city that are very sweet, very down to earth, and very open to dating, and also very beautiful. The weather in Barcelona is amazing. It's great year round. And again, it has great day game, great night game, and great online game. You can do all three. Now, this is a biased perspective for me as someone who speaks Spanish, so take it for what it's worth, but I do have a coach who lives in Barcelona who doesn't speak Spanish, who does just fine there, absolutely crushes it. So you can absolutely live and thrive in Barcelona without speaking Spanish. Barcelona nightlife in particular, I absolutely love. Clubs are open late. It's quiet enough you can talk, but there's still enough going on, and it's still cool enough and kind of high-end feeling enough that you get a lot of incredibly attractive girls there. So it really is this amazing mix. And also, a lot of the tourist clubs are right on the beach, so there's this very easy way to talk to the girl, walk out to the beach, and then go from there. It's absolutely just a wonderfully created environment for meeting women, on top of the fact that it is a huge tourist destination that also tends to attract attractive tourists, and on top of which it has a beautiful local population, so what's not to love? So what are the downsides of Barcelona? Well, it doesn't have huge downsides, but there are a few. Number one, if you don't speak Spanish, again, I mentioned that can be an annoyance. Number two, it is a tourist city, and for that reason, it is a little bit seasonal. It definitely has a high season and a low season, so during the non-tourist season, it won't be as much fun or as cool or as many attractive girls. as it would be during the tourist season. Beyond that, one of the things that is good about Barcelona is also the drawback, which is that the nightlife is not super exclusive. It's not crazy high-end. It doesn't get the absolute hottest girls, but it does get very hot girls. So it's great in the sense that you can get access to it. It's not as great in terms of being the absolute tip-top creme de la creme in terms of the scene as compared to certain other cities. So that is a bit the trade-off. Before we get to city number one, I want to give you a couple of honorable mention cities. These are great cities that couldn't quite make the list, but definitely worth considering as a place to live, to meet attractive women, and to have a great dating life. I'll go through them very quickly, but it is worth mentioning them. Honorable mention number one, London. Incredible metropolitan city, lots of high-end girls, great for day game, decent for night game, great for online game, and also just culturally a wonderful place to live overall. It also has a lot of things in common with my number one city, but it doesn't quite do them as well as it does in my opinion. Next city that I really love, an honorable mention, is actually Prague, Czech Republic. It could possibly have been higher, but I haven't been there that often. I've had an amazing experience. I found the girls there very beautiful, very sweet. It was a little hard to hook up right away with them, but as far as dating and wanting to date and being sweet and wanting a relationship, amazing city. One thing I will say as an American English speaker, there is definitely a language barrier. I would have preferred that English was spoken better, but there are enough girls who speak good English, and also the girls are very patient with the language there because they are very sweet in general. I love the culture. I had a great time there. Next honorable mention would be the three big Canadian cities, but only in the summer. That would be Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. In the summer only. The winters are brutal and no fun up there, but the summer I find that Canadians really do come out and play. And the final set of honorable mention cities is going to be a category, which is sort of medium-sized southern US cities. These are some cities that I've had amazing times in that fit this category. In North Carolina, both Charlotte and Raleigh. In Texas, Austin, Texas. And in Arizona, Phoenix/Scottsdale area. I've had amazing times in those cities. The warm weather really does attract attractive girls. They like being out where it's warm. They also, in any city where girls are not wearing as many clothes, they tend to be in better shape, take care of their bodies more, care more about their appearance, which is reflected in how attractive the girls are. Now finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, what is my number one city for meeting girls in the world, at least from my experience? It's gotta be New York. It absolutely has to be. Number one, it is one of the biggest cities in the world, so there is something for everyone in terms of girls. There's an abundance of women, and there's always something to do. On top of which, it is an aspirational city. It has some of the biggest companies in the world. It has some of the biggest modeling in the world. It has so much going on that it attracts the absolute top tier of people. If you want to find a 10, there are absolutely 10s in New York. Beyond that, New York has some of the best logistics of any city anywhere. People in New York do not drive. They take taxis, Ubers, or they take the train, which means that at the end of the night, they don't have to go get their car. They don't have to worry about who they're carpooling with. If a girl likes you, she can come home with you. It's very easy logistically. Beyond that logistically, people are living so close together, the actual just literal distance between where you are and where you live and where she lives is much less than in much more sprawled out cities. Finally, the population of New York. It actually skews towards having more women than men, and it has a very young population. It has a population of a lot of people that moved there to make it in the world. They moved there to make it in life because it is the place, if you can make it here, you'll make it anywhere. And so what happens on a practical level is you get a lot of young people who are looking for relationships, moving into the city, and they don't have deeply entrenched social circles, so they're very social and very much open to and even looking for meeting and having relationships. On top of which, amazing night game, both high-end and lower-end, right? It has the extremely exclusive nightclubs, and then it also has the bar-level nightclubs where if you don't want to deal with the access, you can still meet very attractive girls on a regular basis. So it has both tiers of nightlife, has amazing day game, and the online game in New York is second to none. As far as the downsides of dating in New York, really it comes down to money. Number one, the city overall is expensive. Going out is expensive. Taking girls on dates is expensive just because everything costs more. Beyond that, if you want access to the highest tier of New York nightlife, it is actually hard to get access. You're either going to have to spend a lot of money or spend a lot of time getting into it. Now, as I mentioned, the second tier is still really good, but everything's available to you and it is great at that top tier level. It's also great again at the second tier level, night game, day game, online game. There's a lot to love about New York. Also, both a pro and a con, there is absolutely a culture where hooking up is acceptable in New York. That has to do with a lot of the things I said, not having deeply entrenched social circles, has to do with cultural things, has to do with a lot of people coming there and being single. So if you like hooking up, that's a good thing. If you're not such a fan of hookup culture and you want something more steady and stable, you might actually consider that a downside. Although I will say you can absolutely get into real relationships in New York. It's not like it's all hook up and you can't have real deep relationships, get married, have kids. Lots of people do that. I'm not saying it's not possible. So that's my list, and those are amazing cities for meeting women overall. However, more important than the specific cities is the reason why. Because I want you to understand what's actually best for you and understand the categories of what makes a city good and what makes a living environment within the city good as well. So definitely take that to heart and pick the best city for you. I have so many students who come on boot camps in cities they don't live in, and they actually find it freeing because they're out meeting girls without consequence, without pressure, and they get incredible results because of that attitude of being on vacation and just treating it like fun. So I highly recommend that as well. That's it. Thanks for watching. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of opinions below. This city sucks. This city's amazing. Go ahead and put them in the comments. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. I'm also very curious to find out if there's some cities I've overlooked that I should be traveling to. But yeah, put those in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.